All right, you guys, we're going to get started. Can you guys hear me in the back all right? It's okay? It's coming in? Awesome. All right, so why don't we start with the prayer? In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Lord Jesus, I just ask for you to be present. I ask for your Spirit to be sent down upon us. I ask you to be with us powerfully. Lord, I ask you to soften the hearts of everyone here, of all the students, all the group leaders. I ask that you would help them to hear your word, that there would be truth spoken into their hearts. I ask that you would guide me as I talk, as I speak, that your words would become my words. Lord, I ask that you would start a fire in the hearts of each and every person here, myself included. Lord, that you would only increase our desire to serve you and to be with you. Lord, I thank you for every opportunity that you've given us, and especially for this opportunity to be here tonight. And we just ask for the intercession of our Blessed Mother as we say, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord. All right, so welcome everybody again. Hopefully in the gym you guys can hear me. I try and change some things so it's not so echoey. You guys obviously have better sound than you did last week. I heard it was super loud and then super echoey and off the wall, and that's just what we get when we're doing some stuff like this for the first time. So thanks for bearing with me, and hopefully today will be a little more smooth and a little easier for you to follow along. So today's topic, if you can't read, can you guys actually see that in the back all right? Is that like clear enough for you? It's talking about man's thirst and desire for God. And so we're just going to start talking about briefly, like, what are some of the things that we desire? Like, as people, what are the things that we desire? Can this wait, JJ? Sorry. You guys, just so you know, JJ is on the phone right now, mid-presentation.
Just give me 1 second.
I don't have a second, JJ. I'm serious. This is just... I think he's trying to help someone get masks. All right, so anyways, we're okay. We're going to keep moving. So what are the things that you guys desire? So I'm like actually asking you, raise your hand and tell me what are some of the things you desire. Like, they can be very simple things, or they can be more like complex things, but one from each group. So someone give me something you just desire in general over here. Money. Okay, we got a money. Food in the back. You got to be loud. Safety. What about over here? So double safety. People want to be safe. What's the group got here? What do you desire? Like, what's something you want? God, okay, that's a good one. I think it's you know, kind of just stealing from the PowerPoint, but whatever. All right, what about you guys? Peace. These guys want peace. I think they're going to go for the Miss America pageant next year. And I just really want peace on earth. And I will spin this little baton now so I can achieve it. I'm just kidding. Peace would be good. Just picking on you guys. All right, so there's different things we want. So, like, thinking more deeply about like the things what are the things that like you're thinking about throughout the day? Because the things that we're generally thinking about are probably the things that we want more. So like in general, what are the things that are consuming your mind? I'm not going to ask you this time, but that kind of should give you a good idea of like where your priorities are. And it's not like it's a bad thing if we have a lot of things other than like our faith consuming our mind throughout the day. In fact, I would call you human, and I would say that's normal. There's a lot of different things. Me personally, right now, I'm just frustrated because I bought a new gun, I got to put a new scope on it, and if for some reason it's not lining up, and I swear I'm not that bad of a shot, I swear, and it's just getting a little frustrating, so that's consuming my thoughts a lot. So right now, that's one of the things I desire is a working gun and a working scope, or maybe better aim. I'm not sure which. What's that? Maybe all the above. So what I need, though, Actually, before that, I would guess that most of you probably have some of these desires that either you don't want to admit or you just haven't had enough time to think about it. But most of you, I assume, want sports titles. Like, you want to win championships. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be on the team, right? Like, that's pretty obvious. I would be willing to bet there's a lot of you that want to have a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I would assume that's probably true for most of you. If I recall my time in high school, I remember being like, yeah, I wish I had a girlfriend. You know, here I am, the 28, finally married. No, I'm just kidding. You know, but those are things we want, right? Some of you, maybe you want to have a job, maybe you want to get good grades, maybe you just want to have fun as you go through high school. You know, whatever it is, these are a lot of the things that we want. So I need 5 people, and if I don't get the volunteers, I'll just call on people to come up and come on up, and I just need you to have in your mind one thing personally that you actually desire. All right? And we're gonna work through the gamut here. So I need 4 more people. Yeah, man, you came up, sure. All right, Gavin, and you got to get some of the girls too. We gonna get? We gotta hurry. Will, come on up, Will. Chloe? I think they were pointing at Chloe. And then who did you say over here? Michaela? Yep. All right, Michaela, you too. Come on up. All right, you guys spread out in this line so they can see on the camera. Wave to your friends. They should be able to see you across the gym. Come on up. Come on up. Right here. Can you see them all in there, Chris? We won't hurt you, Michaela. And so I just need you to, you should have had a little time to think. So tell me, starting on the end, Nolan, what is it that you desire personally? It doesn't have to be something super deep, but give me something that's real. Games? Gains. He wants sick gains. I'm going to say sick gains because you don't want to just be mediocre, right? So he wants to pack on some muscle. He's hitting the protein shakes. Great.
I don't know.
You don't? All right, we'll come back to you. You got 3 people. Chloe? A state championship in volleyball? To play sports? To win what? To win football games. All right, so now we're going to go back to Michaela.
Fun with friends.
Fun with friends. And now we're going to ask them why. I want to know why. Why is it you want these gains?
To make myself better physically.
To make himself better physically. Why?
So I can be healthier.
Why?
So I can, I don't know, it's a lot of whys.
I know, but I'm trying to get to something.
I don't know, because you feel better.
You feel better. Okay, so he feels better if he gets these gains. All right? Michaela, why?
It makes me happy.
It makes you happy? It's a good answer, yeah, Chloe? It would make you happy? Okay. Everyone's gonna, yeah.
I have fun when I play sports.
You have fun? And why do you want to have fun?
Because I like having fun.
He likes having fun. All right, Gavin?
I don't know, it's bad to lose.
It's bad to lose? So your only motivation to win is to not lose? All right. You guys, give him a round of applause. You guys can go sit back down. All right, so some people were able to kind of push their thinking back a little further, right? And generally, I'm going to go ahead and jump on a limb and say that most of us, we just want to be happy, right? You know, whether it's the gains to be healthy, to feel good, to be, you know, to just feel like you're okay and be happy about with where you're at and how you feel, whether it's the winning the state championships, whether it's playing sports, whether it's being with your friends. Generally, I would argue that almost all of our desires could be brought back to wanting to be happy. I think that's generally pretty fair. You know, even if you think about people who have really like kind of disordered desires, right? People who are doing things that are wrong. You know, you could even argue that someone who like kills someone probably wants to be happy. Like we do things we don't want to do, or we know aren't good for us because we think it'll make us happy in a certain instance. Right? Like people go out and party and get like belligerently drunk because at the time they're happy. And then the next day they realize they regret a lot of the things that happen. Right? People go out and they do a lot of these things, not all of them inherently bad, but just generally thinking this will make me happy. And so this is what drives a lot of our desires. We're really motivated by our happiness. It's not a coincidence that this is what it all boils down to, by any means, right? This is from the Catechism, and so we're not going to like read through a lot of it. A lot of you guys should know what the Catechism is. We've talked about it, but it's basically like the handbook to following Jesus and what the Catholic Church teaches that goes along with the Bible. But it says the desire for God is written in the human heart because man is created by God and for God, and God never ceases to draw man to himself. Only in God will he find the truth and happiness he never stops searching for. All right, so we desire to be happy most generally because we desire God, right? According to what this is saying, like, only in God will we find the truth and happiness, right? And this desire comes from the fact that we want God. We don't always know that. We can't always pinpoint that. If I was to ask these 5 again, would they like narrow this all back to like I want to be healthy because I want God? Probably not. But I can tell you these desires are all ordered from this certain desire that we have to be with God. You know, if you look at it, it says we're all made by God and for God. And the fact that we're all made by God and for God means that we're made for a certain purpose and we're made for a certain end. Mitch, is everything okay? Because if you don't stop, I'm going to have you sit right in front of the camera next to me. Is that clear? All right. And you guys sitting next to him, the same goes for you. It's not just Mitch talking. Cool. All right, glad we got that out of the way. We're made by God and for God. We have a purpose. We have a purpose for our lives. We have an end goal. And that's something that like we know to be true. It's a fact of life. It's how God made us. You know, how many people have ever made something? Like wood shop, anything. Like what, has anyone made something like kind of like maybe specific, like they had a certain intention in mind for that thing? What's that? Well, sure, but give me something that was a success. Like what's something you guys have made in Woods class, for example, that like you had, like what have you made? You made a stool? What was that stool for? What's that? Yeah, but what is she going to use the stool for? Okay, so Nolan made a stool for sitting for a classroom. Now, if I were to tell Nolan, like, Nolan, I know you made the stool for this, but I can use the stool for a lot of other things. I can use it to set wood on it, and I can split wood. You know, I can use it to, like, I can use it as, like, a battering ram to get through a door. I could use it to whatever, like, million things you could think of for a stool. I could tell you, like, no, this is the use because I can use it for that. Like, we can think that, but in reality, Nolan knows that he made this stool to be sat on. And no matter what you do with that stool, no matter how you use it, that stool was made to be sat on because he was the creator who intended a certain purpose. Okay, so for us, who are created by God and for God, no matter what we can do with our lives, no matter the things that you see, the things that you do, how you feel, that doesn't change a thing. Because you were created for a specific created for a specific purpose by a specific someone. If that person created you, that is your end, that is your goal. You can't say otherwise. You are not the creator. You are not your own God. Okay, and I just make that very clear. I'm not like, I realize how I kind of sound very firm because it is a firm teaching, but I just want you to know, like, no matter what the world tells us, this is what we are created for. We are created for God. We are created by God. We are created with a purpose to be with God. That's that. Like, that can't be changed, no matter what people are saying, no matter what people come up with, like, oh, well, I think our lives should be lived like this. Well, you think that, but you didn't make us. You don't know. You didn't put these desires on my heart. All right, so lastly, we are created by love and for love, right? And love has a lot of weird ideas wrapped around it nowadays. Love is not what it, no, the world doesn't tell us what it actually is. It confuses us and tells us it's a feeling and all these different things. But, in a sense, this is kind of the same thing as we are created by God for God. But it just kind of tells us, like, unless we are loving in the way that God is loving, unless we end up with God who is loving, unless we receive that love from God, we're not going to find that desire. We're not going to find, or we're not going to fulfill that desire. We're not going to find that happiness that we're looking for. And it's okay. We all get distracted from this, right? Like, we all get distracted from our end goal. That's common. There's a phrase, don't lose sight of the forest for the trees. And I think that's very true for us, right? Because we live in this world right now, and we see things that are happening right now, and they're going on around us, and we get caught up in the minute details of things, and we're thinking like, well, I got to do this, and I got to do this, and I got to do this, and we kind of forget the big picture. We forget to step back and just kind of see like, all right, like what's really the big purpose? What's the big goal? And if we do that, we realize, well, okay, I know that we're made for God, that we're supposed to be with God, that we're called to be saints. And when we do that, when we actually step back on that bigger, more important focus, all of a sudden those smaller things kind of start to go to the side. There is a saint who talks about like our journey on earth is really similar to, per se, a journey on earth, right? He's like, if I was to, I kind of modified this example, but this is kind of going off what he says. Say I start you in California, all right? And you have to go from California to Maine. And like once you get there, you'll get an amazing, amazing reward. Right? I don't know what the reward is because it's amazing for different people. But say that's the thing. Now the trick, or the certain rule is that if you were to go, you can't do it like in one day, especially if you fly, you could, but you can't in the rule. You can't do it in one day. And actually, you have to stay 1 year in each state as you work your way across the country. So every state you go into, you have to stay for a year. I would imagine that if you were to start to do this, you would probably spend a few years in California, because who wants to go from California on the beaches to Nevada, right? And then after you go to Nevada, like, you're going to stay there. You're probably going to make friends. You're going to meet new people. You're going to find a new house. You're going to settle down. You're like, well, I don't want to move every year. This is going to be exhausting. And so you kind of settle down. And then you're like, okay, time to go to Utah to the Badlands. And you start moving across. But this would get, one, a little tiresome, but two, like, it'd be exhausting in the fact that like you're going to make a lot of relationships and you're probably going to get comfortable with where you're at. And eventually I would imagine that most of us would probably get comfortable and say, you know what, Maine and that reward sound good, but this is a lot of work, and I think I'm just going to settle down in Colorado because Boulder's a cool place. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of hiking. It's super pretty, and I'm going to call it good. And I think this is a lot of us what we do in our life, because the idea of having to stay in a year, like our time on earth is significant, right? In the big picture, not really, but for us, we're here a long time. We get comfortable in things. We get comfortable in our ruts. We get comfortable with our friends. We don't really like to branch out. We're creatures of habit. But just like the idea of that reward of when you get to Maine, we like forget the big picture, like the ultimate reward that's in store for us. And so sometimes we just get very complacent. And we stop moving forward, right? We stop pushing ahead because we lose the forest for the tree. We focus on the minute things, the things we have now, the things that are around us, the things that make us comfortable, forgetting that there's something a lot bigger, a lot more important way out there. All right, and I say way out there, but we don't really know, obviously, when we're going to go on, when we're going to move on to the next life. Hopefully it's way out there a little bit for us, but, we don't know that. And so when we talk about this desire for God, we have to keep in mind what the ultimate reward is. One, we know that we have it, and no matter what we think, that can't be changed. And two, that when we have it, nothing will be better. That's as good as it can get, because that's getting God himself. All right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you guys go into your small groups for a little bit. There's discussion points here. So for the people watching and for you guys here, specifically group leaders, but students, let your group leaders know. If you see this, this is when we're obviously 1 minute away from getting back to the next half of the presentation. So this way I don't have to awkwardly cut in and end your conversations. Just keep your eyes up. When you see this, that's how you know that the conversations are wrapping up. So these discussion points, they kind of supplement the binders that the group leaders have. You can kind of pick from some of the ones that apply, but they're just here to be more visible for you. So with that, get into your small groups. All right, we're going to keep moving along. So, hopefully you guys had some good discussion. We're gonna move ahead, and I just want to get back to like, kind of, I don't know if I'd say get back to basic sense and things, but kind of just talk about some things that are we probably know, but don't really think about that much. Just man and religion, right? Like, generally, people have always believed that there was at least a God, if not multiple gods. This quote from the Catechism says, "One may well call man a religious being," right? And the idea behind that is like throughout history, there's always been people that have looked to a God or many gods and different types of gods, but people didn't really question the existence of a God. That didn't come around till much more recently, really. Religion's not new, right? Now, don't get me wrong, there always have been some people, atheists, who, don't really believe, but like, just kind of looking through, like, a lot of people just generally, like, a lot of religion and other religions, not the more, like, 40,000 Christian denominations now, but like more historical religions focused on nature as God. And pardon me for I just get used to typing God with a capital G, that this is actually incorrect here. It's not supposed to be a capital G God. That was my fault. But generally, like nature is God, like lightning. They would look to thunder. They would look to fire. They would look to wind. Like there's all these different gods that are wrapped up with that. You have the Egyptian gods. I don't know if you've ever looked up some of the Egyptian gods. Their names are weird. Nathor, Set, Tereret, Khonsu, Sobek, Osiris, Thoth. All these weird names like this, right? And a lot of these guys, their gods, again, are really like, there's like a crocodile god, there's like a hippo god, there's God over the sun, there's a God over darkness, there's a God, right? Like you guys, actually, like when we look at Moses in the time of Egypt, like the Nile was considered, like there was a God for the Nile. And so when Jesus actually turned the water to blood, it was showing that he was more powerful than that God. And the same thing with the frogs, it was showing that he was more powerful than the God of the frogs, right? So like the Egyptians had tons of gods, but they never said that God didn't exist. They just had a wrong idea of who and what God was, right? When they have like the Greek gods, right? Like you have Apollo, you have the Zeus, right? The thunderbolts, the lightning. You guys remember from watching Hercules when you were younger. You have Athena, you have, let's see, there's a couple more I wrote down, but you get the idea. Poseidon, Ares, all these different gods. And again, these are very much off of nature and also very much off of like some of the desires they have. Like there's war gods, right? Like that's what Athena is. She's like a war god. And so there's a lot of gods, but there's not a good idea of who he is. And it's actually kind of interesting. If you look in the Acts of the Apostles, you see St. Paul talking to the Romans, talking to the Greeks, and he kind of discounts all of these gods and tries to point them to the one God, right? And if you look really far back to like the Jewish people, we really go back to our God, right? And if you look even further before, like the Israelites were a thing, we look back in the Bible and we get to Abraham, and you look even further back to Adam and Eve, there was always a notion of God as God. And what I mean by that, in Moses, he tells them that I am. It's just the God who has always existed. He was never created. He's always been there. He thought everything into existence, or spoke everything into existence. He didn't have to do anything. He's just always been there, right? And the God of all love. Like, that's our God, right? So the idea today that God, there is no God is more common. It's more seemingly common than it used to be. it seems to be more prevalent. Now, it's hard to say for sure because, you ask a lot of people and they say like, yeah, I'm an atheist, but then they say, but I'm a spiritual person, and so I'm an atheist, but I'm spiritual, and so I kind of believe this, and I kind of believe that. So it's hard to say, but there are a lot, I can say, it seems to be there's a lot more people who are just dead set on there is no God. And it kind of makes us wonder, like, what's different now that there's more people saying there's no God than in the past, probably more than ever before? We got to ask some questions. And I have listed to the left of this, there's 5 different things. The Catechism lists a couple more. But I just want to go through these because these are things that block us from God. These are the reasons that we don't believe in God, and they block our desire to be with God. And if we don't have a desire to be with God, why would we bother pursuing any knowledge or believing that He even exists if we have no desire? And we're going to talk more about the existence of God. But the religious indifference is one of the reasons people don't have a desire for God. I thought this pretty much sums up a lot of our world today. Pardon my HE double hockey sticks here, but honestly, as long as you're happy, who the hell cares? Right? Like, that's what a lot of people think. Like, hey, if you're happy, I'm happy. Don, if you're happy, I'm happy. I'm fine with it. Like, you believe what you want to believe as long as you're happy. Like, people don't have any, like, hard set values. No one will tell you anything's wrong. But there's a lot of indifference. And if there's this kind of indifference, how would this desire for God ever grow? What would ever call us to like drive further to work towards that goal? Why would I bother leaving Nevada if I can be perfectly happy in Nevada and seemingly have what I could have in Maine, that ultimate reward? Why would I bother? So there's this religious indifferentism. Like, basically that means, if you don't know, like, it just means I don't care. Like, there's this idea that religion doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the difference is. It's all the same, right? So if religious indifferentism is the word's throwing you off, that's all it's saying, right? So that's one of the reasons that our desire for God is really hindered, or people's desire for God is hindered. There's a lot of cares of the world, all right? Boom, number one. Everyone knows it. You guys have heard it a million times, but it was one of the first things shouted out so lovely by JJ of the things that he desires is money. And money's not a terrible thing. We know that, but it's one of the things that distracts us from our true desire to be with God. Right? Like, far and above, that's what consumes our minds, because it's a real thing that we have to deal with, and we do have to use money, but we get a little greedy and we want more so we can have this, and we worry about if we're going to have enough money to live the life that we want to live. And we stop thinking about the big picture. We focus on the one money tree, and we don't focus on the forest, and then that's being what God has for us. All right? There's other things. Who can tell me who that is without going any further? Absolutely. All the guys are like, yeah, it's Dwayne The Rock, man. Dwayne The Rock Johnson, right? This guy, 2 years in a row, he's the #1 paid actor in the world. This guy is the definition of famous, and I dare say the definition of jacked, right? He is a beast. And he's worked very, very, very hard to get where he's at. Like, he tells stories, I don't know if you've ever, like, if you've done any research on him or watched anything or listened on, like, his actual life, but, like, there was a point where he was literally, like, sleeping in the streets trying to make it as a wrestler. And then eventually he achieved his goals of being a wrestler, and he, like, skyrocketed, became popular, and now he's the best actor, most highly paid actor in the world, and he's probably one of the most famous people in the world for that reason, right? And a lot of us, we look at these guys or these women, there's obviously women too, and it's like we want to be famous. We want to achieve the glory that they have, right? We're more concerned about how we look. We're concerned about, being upheld in a good public image. We're concerned about those things. We're concerned about the fame. All right, so there's a lot of cares of the world that are going to keep us not desiring God, but desiring this fame, this fortune. Anyone know what this is? Good grief. I saw this show on Netflix, and I instantly thought, this is the biggest pile of trash I've ever seen come across my screen. And so, and some people know, if you don't know what this show is, do not waste your time listening to anything about it except for what I have to say here. But if you read the description, it pretty much sums it up if you can. Let me read it for you. On the shores of paradise, gorgeous singles meet and mingle. But there's a twist. To win a $100,000 grand prize, they'll have to give up sex. what the heck is this? Like, what is this? This is like a show on TV. And the only reason I show this, I don't care if people have seen it. I'm just telling you, don't ever waste your time again. Like, the world is just like telling us, like, sex, women, and men are to be objectified. And like, you think this show is literally just for entertainment? Like, no, like they want people to watch. They know people are going to watch us because they have these attractive people on the show wearing like practically nothing, right? And on top of that, it's telling us that like most people in a normal situation would be having sex, but they can't because they got to get $100,000. Like, are you dumb? It's just stupid. And so here, this is the world we're living in, and this is what we're being fed. Because although you guys are outstanding citizens and amazing Catholics, most people are going to watch this and process this as like, yeah, this is the norm. This is what I want. I want to be on that show. And more importantly, I want to be with attractive people that I can objectify and, just kind of use to my own advantage. Those are the cares of the world that we're living in. And those things definitely block our desire for God, because honestly, I can't say this because I haven't watched it, but I doubt there's no one in that show who wakes up to get their morning prayer in. And I doubt they went to Mass on Sunday. Has anyone who watched it, does that happen? Does anyone do that? There's Jesus in it? Yeah, he looks like Jesus. Oh, okay, so there's a guy who looks like Jesus. He probably has long hair. I highly doubt he's Jesus. Moving on. Scandal, abuse, and hypocrisy. I don't know if you guys know what this picture I have is here, but this is a Pennsylvania report of all the priests and all the bishops who were a part of the scandal in our church. It's a terrible, terrible document to read, not because it's false, but because of how true it is and the horrible things that happened. But I can tell you that a lot of people's desire to be with God and to be with His church were probably hindered because of this. Because why would I want to follow a God who has a church that lets this happen? Let alone, why would I want to follow a God who lets this happen? Why do I want to live like so-and-so who says they believe these things but doesn't act on them whatsoever? Like, I have no desire to follow that God or to be with that God. Right? Why would we? There's scandal, there's abuse, there's hypocrisy. That will block everyone's desire to be with God because no one likes a hypocrite. Another thing, people don't understand what we believe. Like, people will pose this argument like, well, if God's real, He wouldn't let anything bad happen, and that clearly happened, so He's not real. It's like, wow, you're the first person to think of that. That's smart, right? This person here really figured it all out. The existence of suffering is an impossible problem for believers and an all-good, caring God to solve. Even if they use the wiggle room to argue without some suffering, there can be no charity, or that people who do no wrong are punished, or people who do wrong are punished, they can't account for the suffering of innocent children and animals, or worse, the devout believers in their faith. So this guy understands everything about our faith, and he's cornered us because he knows that we can't possibly explain evil. We can't possibly explain suffering. Right? But people have these ideas that they think they know what we teach. They think we don't have answers, but we do. Everyone knows that Jesus Christ was killed and brutally murdered and yet brought about the salvation of the world. That's why suffering can happen. Because anything bad that happens can be made into something better because God can do literally anything and has already saved us. Right? But people have these ideas, right? A lot of people have ideas that we worship Mary. A lot of people have ideas that we worship the saints. A lot of people have ideas that we hate people who have same-sex attraction, right? A lot of people just think they know what we believe, but they don't know. And if that's what they think, why would they desire to be a follower of that God? And the last one that I think probably rings true in a lot of hearts in our own homes, in our own parishes, our own here. Maybe not in this room, I hope not, but around, is that people don't really want to desire to be with God for two other reasons. They're scared to change because they're scared what God's going to ask of them. They're scared that if I figure out what God wants for me, if I follow this desire to be with Him, He's going to call me to be a nun, and I'm a man. No, He's going to call me to be a priest. I'm scared that He's going to make me live this life that I have no desire to live. And I don't want to change like that. I like the way my friends are now. I like Boulder, Colorado. Why do I have to worry about Maine? I don't want to change. I'm scared. Or There's the other side of it, and it's like, no, no, no. No, I know what I've done, and there's no going back from that. God cannot forgive that. There's no way. I don't even want to know what he has to say because my sin was too good. It is too big. And if he found out, he would reject me, and I can't handle that. So those are two big things, right? Like, and those things are true. Like, I know in my own life I felt those emotions. And those things hinder our desire to be with God because we're scared. We want to pull back. We withdraw. So those are the things, there's just 5 of them. Like I said, there's more that really hold us back. But the good news is, if we know what blocks us, we can work through those things. We can move past those things. All right? And so now is the part in the while where this becomes less of a general people thing and it becomes a you thing. This is when it becomes, you guys have to think about what you think and what you believe. And so I ask, what if I don't feel this desire? What if Landon doesn't have this desire at all? Like, I don't know, Trevor's over there and he's been listening to this and he's like, yeah, it makes sense, but I have zero desire to be with God. They say that we're closest to God in church, and when I'm in church, oh, believe me, sometimes I don't feel happy, right? This just drags on. I went to adoration. I didn't feel God. I felt my knees hurt after I was on the floor for a long time. Why? I don't have this desire. It doesn't make you a bad person. It just means there's probably these things that are blocking you. I can say I was the same way. Like, I was there. I can say there's times in my life where I am distracted, I am blocked. These desires, these desires of this world, they kind of come and go, but as long as, we try and find that one desire that rings true in our hearts all the time, we're going to be able to fight through those things. Hold that thought. If we look back to our catechism, it says that God never ceases to draw man to himself. He never ceases to draw us to himself. And so if you feel like that's you, if you feel like you've never had a desire to have God on your heart, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. Because God's constantly pulling you. He's constantly trying to draw you to himself. Now, the other reason is, what if, a lot of us probably might put up the block that I honestly don't think God can fulfill my deepest desire. I question that sometimes still. Like, I know better here, but sometimes down here, that's a tall order. I mean, do you really think you can stake everything on that God can fulfill every greatest desire that you have, and then if you do what he says, you're going to be happier than what you think you want? That's a tough one to swallow. I mean, we know it's true, but do we believe it, and do we live our lives in a way that reflects it? It's a tough question. It's a true question we all have to ask. Because if we can honestly say yes, I think he can fulfill every single desire that I have, then there's no reason for us to get swept up in what the world has to offer. But that's a struggle. But again, we go back to this. If we don't know that, if we don't know if we really believe that, then we trust that God can draw us there because he's constantly working on bringing us to him. Our desires cannot be filled without God. This is it. This is the last slide. And this is a fact. You were made by God. You were made for God. And nothing will make you happy until you are with God. That's how it's written. That's what's done. And if you don't think that, you're not weird, right? You're not a bad person. It just means there's a lot of growth that has to take place. It just means a lot of questions that has to be asked, and there's a lot of knees that have to hit the floor, that have to spend some time in prayer. And that's the beauty of it, because all we have to do is pray. All we have to do is ask. Say, God, I don't know. I don't know that you can fulfill every desire. So I ask, like, just show me you can. Show me that you can actually fulfill my desire. I can tell you when I was a junior in high school, junior or sophomore, I honestly can't remember which year, I went to Steubenville for the first time, and we went up and we had adoration on Saturday night. And I remember thinking, for the first time in my life, I was so elated and happy in that adoration. And I didn't do anything special. I didn't have anything special happen to me. But I just, like, from the depths of my heart, I just said, God, whatever you want, let me know, because I'm going to do it, because I cannot imagine always feeling like this. And that was one of the first times I ever felt that deep of a desire on my heart to be with God. And all I did was open up and ask. And you guys have that opportunity literally every day. Like last year, for those who were with us last year, when we did the encounter and we prayed, like, you can have that moment of knowing God and desiring Him within your own prayer, in your own homes. It's nothing special. Oh, I shouldn't say that. It's entirely special. But you don't need to be in a special place for that to happen. And even more, last thing, if you're thinking to yourself, this is good, I like what you're saying, but it sucks that we have to wait till we die and we're in heaven. Because I get the feeling that this life is going to be miserable if I do what God wants till I get there. If that's what you're thinking, I don't blame you. But I assure you that Jesus came to say the kingdom of heaven was at hand, like, now. That the kingdom of heaven, like, is within His church. That He didn't just want us to be happy when we die, but He wants us to experience some of that happiness here and now. Right? So there's no like, we don't really have to wait till we get to Maine, you guys. We can experience God as we move through to this further end goal. We can experience Him in California, Nevada, and Utah, and Colorado, and even in the corn huskers of Nebraska. Like, it doesn't matter as long as we're honestly seeking to desire Him. We can have those things now. And that's the best thing about all of this. That we have a God who loves us. He's not going to make us wait, but He's ready to give it to us right now. All we have to do is ask. All right? So you guys are in your small groups, and that's it for today. All right? See you guys. Thank you.